Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today, finishing up my 2021 year-end top 10s in the 168-pound super middleweight division as I discuss my number one super middleweight in the world right now. He is the undisputed super middleweight champion and the current pound-for-pound king of boxing, Saul Canelo Alvarez. Canelo came into the year with a lofty goal. He ended 2020, the COVID year. He fought one time, officially moving back to 168, where he would take on Callum Smith for the WBA and the vacant WBC super middleweight titles. He dominated the undefeated Callum Smith over 12 rounds, one-sided rounds, just beat him up and dominated him to a one-sided 12-round unanimous decision and became the unified super middleweight champion. This was the third division he'd unified belts at, so that was a big accomplishment. But he had a goal of becoming undisputed in 2021. And in order to get there, in February, he had to make a mandatory defense against Avni Yildirim. A lot of people have knocked Canelo for taking that fight, but people don't understand is that he had to take that fight in order to accomplish his goal of undisputed. And here's why. Avni Yildirim became the mandatory challenger for the title 2 years prior, so almost 3 years now. 2 years prior, in February of 2019, he challenged Anthony Dirrell for the vacant WBC title that David Benavidez was stripped of due to his cocaine use and positive cocaine test. He was stripped of that belt, but Benavidez was named champion emeritus, which means he can challenge for the title whenever his suspension is up. He moves ahead of any mandatory challengers. So Anthony Dirrell controversially beat Avni Yildirim, so much so that the WBC ordered that Avni Yildirim was the mandatory challenger. But David Benavidez had precedent over Yildirim, so later that year in September of 2019, Benavidez fought Anthony Dirrell for the title and stopped him in the 9th round and became champion. But he still had to deal with Avni Yildirim. Yildirim was in line to fight Benavidez in last year in 2020. COVID pushed the fight back a little bit, and then Yildirim ended up getting injured and could not secure the title fight in August, but he was still the mandatory challenger. Benavidez dropped the title on the scales to Romer Angulo. He missed weight for that optional defense against Romer Angulo. Title went vacant. Canelo petitioned to fight for the vacant WBC title. When he did that, the WBC ordered Canelo to fight that if he got by Callum Smith for the vacant belt and for the WBA belt, that he had to fight Avni Yildirim first. So that's why just 2 months later, in February of 2021, he fought Avni Yildirim. So all these people that want to criticize Canelo for fighting him, he had to take that fight to hold on to his 2 titles and to push forward towards his goal of becoming the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. So, all that being said, the fight went forward and Canelo absolutely dominated Avni Yildirim, stopping him in only 3 rounds. He didn't come out for the 3rd round, and for the 4th round, and Canelo would retain his unified belt. Next on Canelo's hit parade was Billy Joe Saunders, the undefeated WBO champion, 2-division champion. This was a big fight. Canelo wanted to add that 3rd belt, and it ended up being a pretty good scrap. Billy Joe, being a slick southpaw that moves, at first gave Canelo a little bit of trouble, but Canelo, being very patient, kept coming forward, kept landing body shots, kept inching his way closer and closer and closer. Finally, in the 6th, 7th round, he started getting very close and landing his big shots. And then in the 8th round, he landed a wicked uppercut that looked like it hurt Billy Joe badly, and it did, but the more telling damage was that he broke his orbital bone, and we didn't realize until after. Billy Joe, when this corner asked him if he wanted to continue, he didn't say anything. The referee looked at his face, they stopped the fight. Canelo would win by TKO in the 8th round and unify world titles, adding the WBO belt. So he now had 3 out of 4 belts, undisputed, looked more realistic, and it was going to come down to Canelo and Caleb Plant in the second half of the year. They tried to get the fight down for September. Negotiations at first were falling short because of purse requests and everything. Finally, when Canelo started to look elsewhere, he got frustrated and went back to the drawing table, and they made the fight happen with Caleb Plant for the undisputed super middleweight title. That would take place in November, and Caleb Plant would come out undefeated. He would come out and box and do the best he could, but his lack of power is why he couldn't make a dent on Canelo. He couldn't keep Canelo honest with his power. Canelo's got a great chin, and he needs somebody to be able to hit him hard enough to back him up once in a while and stop him from coming forward. And what's his name just couldn't do that. Caleb Plant. And Canelo kept stalking and coming forward and breaking Caleb Plant down. That was what it was. It was a breakdown. And he dominated Caleb Plant down the stretch, and in the 11th round landed a clean left hook that put Plant down hard. A follow-up barrage finished off Caleb Plant, and Canelo became only the 7th man in history to become an undisputed champion of a division of the 4-belt era. And the 4-belt era has been going on for about 30 years now, close to 30 years. So this was a major accomplishment. He became the first Mexican undisputed champion of a division, and he became only the 7th man to unify all 4 belts in the 30-year undisputed era. So huge accomplishment for Canelo. He was the fighter of the year overall in all of boxing, in my opinion, and became undisputed. So it was a monster victory. But heading into 2022, let's look at his stats really fast. So Canelo, he retained the number 1 spot. He was number 1 entering the year. Now he has number 1 locked down in this division. He's 31 years old. He's still in his prime. So he's still there. He's still very, very good. He's a pound-for-pound king. Overall, he is 57-1 with 2 draws, 39 knockouts. Only career defeat at the hands of Floyd Money Mayweather back in 2013 when he was 23, something like that. And pushing into this year, the speculation right now is there was talks at the end of the year, heading into the new year, that Ilunga Makabu, the WBC Cruiserweight champion at 200 pounds, could possibly win the Canelo sweepstakes next. Makabu has a mandatory and a rematch against Debiso Mashunu, and if he gets by Mashunu in their rematch at the end of January, a lot of people were saying May he would be defending that title against Canelo. Canelo's trainer, Eddie Reynoso, petitioned the WBC for that fight, and he also said that he would like to, that Canelo would only come up to 180 pounds because it was just a one-time thing to try to become the first ever Mexican to win championships in 5 different weight classes. So that was one option. But just over the last couple weeks, things have started to shift that Canelo would rather possibly take on Jermall Charlo, the WBC middleweight champion, an undefeated middleweight champion from the United States, which that would be a major fight. Personally, if you're asking me, I'd much rather see him shut Charlo up in his next fight. Absolutely think he dominates Charlo, and I'm leaning towards that's probably going to be what he wants to do. If Canelo was so solid on fighting for the cruiserweight title, if he was so dead set on it, I think there would be no question about it. That's what would be happening next. The fact that the rumors are that he's leaning, that there's talks going on with Charlo, I think that says to me, that Canelo would much rather go in that direction, and I think he's going to. Now, if he fights Charlo or Makabu, I think he wins, no questions asked. But what does he do after that? So say he beats Charlo, which I think is what he's leaning towards more right now. What does he do in the second half of the year? Because Canelo can do what he wants. I personally feel he's eyeballing the Triple G Ryota Murata unification title fight at middleweight, and he would gladly fight the winner, especially if it's Triple G in what would be their 3rd fight. So to me, I think Canelo's got his eyes very close on that. Other outside options are Arthur Beterbiev, the unified light heavyweight champion. That's there. David Benavidez possibly at super middleweight. But I really believe he wants to, before he moves up in weight again, I think he wants to settle this issue with Charlo, and I think he wants to finish his rivalry with Triple G, or even Ryota Murata if Murata's good enough to beat Triple G, because Murata that's a fight that almost happened too last year, or in 2020. That fight almost took place earlier on in the year. So we're going to see what happens for the pound-for-pound king, Canelo Alvarez, in his next fight. But that is my 2021 year-end top 10s. My number one super middleweight in the world, the undisputed super middleweight champion, and the pound-for-pound king, Saul Canelo Alvarez. I hope you guys enjoyed this. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.